I think we're live. Hi everyone! Thanks for tuning in. This is actually a tutorial that people have asked me to do several times because I have a habit of choosing these sort of battle-hardened warrior badass kind of characters, and something I've been doing the last handful of times that I've cosplayed as them is making sure that I properly bloody and dirty myself up. One of the very specific reasons I wanted to do a tutorial is because a lot of girls and guys have been telling me that they actually use paints on their skin and so forth, and that worries me a little bit. I am concerned about people putting spray paint onto their skin, and I think that could be bad for you. You could break out in rashes or hives or worse. So please don't do that. I've got some tips for things that people can use here. I forgot to mention, thank you to Downward Viral for letting me stream on their Twitch page. And you guys can see to the right of the screen are a couple of the examples of costumes and techniques and so on that I've actually used this on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. The first thing I want to show you guys is actually what tools I use. So it's quite simple. I've tried actually rolling around in the dirt before, and it's not something that works. If you try to use real dirt or mud or so on, a lot of times it'll just cake off and it'll fall off, and it just doesn't work. It's not accurate enough, funny enough. But so the two tools that I use more than anything are these right here. This is colored hairspray. What's great about it is that it's water soluble, so you can get multiple layers or multiple looks out of it. You can dilute it in water and get kind of like an older caked on looking layer of dirt, and then you can spray it you can spray it on. If you spray it and push down on the nozzle very lightly, you'll get like a nice spurt, and you can actually use that for like the bottom of garments even, and it makes it look like there's, you know, dirt or mud had splashed up onto the garment or so on. And then you can also use things like brushes to give it different techniques. So this is the base of what I use for everything, and I will show you guys in just a minute what it actually looks like. You can see the brand there. I get these at Party City. I carry them with me to every convention. And like I said, they're not toxic. They're meant to be sprayed around your eyes even. You don't want to get in your eyes, but you can not worry about them. So those are the base of what I use. This is the next tool that I found. It's called Zombie Dirt. What I like about this is it's a powder, and it's a very, very, very potent powder. It actually will show up on dark fabrics, so these things are, you know, they will soak into the fabric and not show up as well. But if you've got something that you want, like a dark hood or dark clothing, and you want dirt to show up on it, this brown is fantastic for that, and the black is also great. And you can just get really fun patterns with it, so this looks like the fresher dirt that was just kicked up from battle or something. So those are the four main things that I use. I actually, this is kind of strange, I have a favorite brand of blood. So this is just a, it's called Backstage brand fake blood. I like it because it like dries up fairly quickly, so you can get these nice blood splatters if you want to put it on a piece of armor, or if you want to spray it directly onto your clothing. But then you can also get like the dried blood effect going down your face, and I'll show you all this in just a minute. And then here, this is the standard brush I use for almost everything. It's really nice if you use it with the blood to look like a scrape. You can get it for like dirt brushed against your face or so on. But I love this little guy. I use it for almost everything. And then if you want to get really fancy, you can do what's called the rigid Collodion. And this stuff is really awesome for making scars. I used it on my Princess of Persia, had that nice scar going across my face. I used it for Mass Effect, the kind of black milk fashion shoot that I did. It's very, very handy. And maybe I should actually put that on first because it takes a while to dry. And then I've got just a really simple reddish makeup that I use inside of the scarring to make it look a little older, as if it had faded a bit. And then, let's see, lastly, I actually just have dry shampoo. So this stuff, some people use it when they don't take showers or something, or they want to like clean their hair or make it style or something. I'll get rid of the oil, I think. I don't actually use it for like real purposes. This stuff is fantastic for making your wigs look older. So a lot of times you'll get a wig straight out of the bag right before convention, and it looks too perfect. It's like it depends on the color of the wig, but it's especially good for like lighter wigs, blonder wigs. If you use a tiny bit of it on darker wigs, it still works, but you have to be careful to not end up with like a gray powder in it. But it just mutes the colors and it makes it look a little less less shiny and perfect. You don't want to be perfect after the battlefield. So I've never done makeup in a camera before. We're gonna see how this goes. I will start by showing you guys how I put on the hairspray. So the black is actually out right now. This is empty, so I'm just going to show you guys in brown. But essentially what I do is I start with a little bucket of water. Whenever I do a costume, I want to start with like the older looking dirt. If you're a warrior, probably been out roaming around for a while. So a lot of times I'll either spray it right into the water, or I'll saturate a paper towel and then spray it onto the paper towel. The great thing about this is that you don't have to, I mean, if you put too much on, you just wash it off. So I'll usually start by kind of stippling it on. You can see even the paper towel has a nice little texture to it. So I'll just kind of rub it on different parts. Like I said, if you put too much in one area, you can just kind of dab it off or so on. But this is going to give you like that underlying layer of grime and make it look, you know, like you've just been out and about for a while. So I usually do that all over my arms, my legs, depending on the costume. I usually, you know, you don't want to forget places like your neck or your hands or your feet, stuff like that. Whatever's showing, you want to make sure that it's got a good amount of coverage, so it doesn't look like you forgot and it draws attention to it. You know, you can actually like squeeze little bits down onto yourself so that you get, you know, that sort of water effect, like maybe you'd been rained on afterwards. But yeah, this is really not that complicated. It's more of just a technique that people don't necessarily, or a product that people don't necessarily use. And I think that that's a bummer because it's awesome. My camera's mirrored, so I'm confusing myself. So already I'm only like, you know, a couple minutes into the tutorial and I'm looking pretty dirty already. I don't want to spray it. Maybe I could try. So if you can see, like, you got a little bit of a spatter pattern there. It's kind of hard to do into the camera, but like when you hold it down very tentatively and just kind of squirt like that, that's when you can start to get that really nice spatter and look like something was kicked up. So now that I made a giant mess all over my desk, I will put on a little bit of the scarring makeup so that you guys can see it work, because it takes a few minutes. Places I found that it works best for me is usually right here on my jawline. We'll see if that'll end up showing up because the lighting in here is not that great. Maybe do my cheek too. Man, drawing into a webcam is harder than it looks. So I'll give that a couple minutes to dry, maybe do another few coats, and move on to the loose powdered dirt. So this stuff I really like, as I said, because it lets you get it gives you a different texture. You can use, you know, paper towels if you want to do that also, but I like this thing. Beware though, if you're pouring it onto here, it's got a bunch of holes in it, so you're gonna make a huge mess. I've had one of these open up in my luggage before. This stuff is super potent, so you don't want to put it near anything that you don't want to be permanently dirty, trust me. So tip it over something. And then you can just kind of brush it on and get, let's see if I can do a darker one. Or maybe I'll do one right here so you can see it better. So you can see, ooh, there we go. You can kind of see the texture, the very specific texture that it got right there. That's something that I then like to go around and do just certain parts of my body more than others. So, you know, you might put a little bit more of an emphasis on elbows, on knees, on places that would get a little bit more roughed up than usual. Am I starting to? Yeah, you're starting to be able to see how the rigid collodion is starting to make my skin pucker there. I don't think this one over here did as much, but I'm getting a nice little scar there. So I do this one with both the black and the brown just to give a little bit more variation. Again, if it gets too dark and you start looking, it looks too intentional or like you did too much, then you can just wipe some of it off. That's the nice part about it. I'm not overly concerned about making a huge mess in my office because I've already spray painted and worked on costumes in here and the floor is totally destroyed. Great. Okay, so we'll do a few more tiny bits. I always like to do a little bit across the nose. But of course, I'm going to do a lot more on accident because I can't see very well. Again, that brush I think is great. This cheek needs some. Okay. I think it might be pushing my luck to try to do another coat in a mirror. But usually I'll do a couple of coats to make sure that I get a nice even pucker on a scar. But it's not painful. You want to make sure that you have remover for it because you can rip off little bits of your skin if you're not careful, and that's no fun. So when it comes to the fake blood, why I like this brand, other than the fact that it dries really nicely, is that it's in a spray bottle, and I've seen ones in tubes and stuff like that, and the spray bottle just isn't going to inherently give a really nice spray. It's going to give a really nice splatter. And I usually like to, like at least 10-15 minutes before I go out to an event, I'll spray some and just let it kind of drape, go down, give you a dried, like this is from an old event, so it'll give you kind of a older look to it. What's nice with costumes like this is the more you wear them, the more that they look authentic, which is great, and your hands just get super dirty, which is super authentic too. Don't forget about making your nails really gross and grimy. With Anya, I didn't put my wig on very well, but with Anya, I always like to spray a little bit here and then let it drip down my face or into my hairline like it's doing right now. Alright, and then we will see if I can get a little bit of... So this is just like the reddish cream makeup. What I'll usually do on a scar is just put a tiny, tiny bit, which I cannot draw into a camera, but I'll put a tiny bit into the indentation and then wipe it off so that it looks a little raw. That is, I'm just going to make a mess because it's reversed, but it gives it just a little bit of a redness to it so that it doesn't look quite as fresh. There we go. I'm looking like I've seen a couple of rough days now. And then so when it comes to the wigs, again, you don't want your wig to be too perfect, so I will even do the same thing where I will spray directly onto the wig and just mist it, or I will, pat something into it with the water. It's hairspray. It's meant to be in your hair, so it's not going to, overly affect the look of it. And if you don't like where this is running, you can always rub it off. And it will actually look fine too, because it'll look like something that you did, mid-stride in the battlefield. You wipe away the blood. There you go. And for the wig, again, here is the volumizing style powder, also known as the dry shampoo. So I will put a little bit in my hand and then pat it on. I usually try to really muss up my hair. You can tame it down afterwards. So if it gets too crazy, you can fix it. But I find that it's often not too crazy looking whenever you are supposed to be in the middle of a war, in this case, against grubs or so on. Alright, I made a massive mess in my office, but I hope that this gave you guys a good idea of what I do. I know it was super short, so now all of you cosplayers out there can stop using paint. Don't hurt yourself or your skin or so on for cosplay. It is not good. Yay! Thank you guys for watching.